I'm carrying your brother's child, but the three of us are staying married and raising it together, my wife said over Sunday dinner. My parents nodded like she'd suggested repainting the kitchen. I'd been married to Renata for 6 years. We had a house, steady careers, everything that looked stable from the outside. My younger brother Dario was 29, lived in my parents' basement, hadn't held a job in years, spent his days gaming. I covered family dinners twice a month. Dario never once thanked me. What I didn't know was that he and Renata had been sleeping together for 4 months. The dinner where it all came out was at my parents' place. I walked in and they were already seated. Renata, Dario, my mom, my dad. Renata stood. I'm pregnant. It's Dario's. But we're staying married and doing this as a modern family. I looked at my parents. They weren't surprised. My mom squeezed Renata's hand. We talked it through yesterday, my dad said. We think you should support them. They'd known for a full day, and no one had told me. I walked out without a word. Renata came home 3 days later with a printed spreadsheet. I need $8,000 for medical costs and the nursery. I've calculated your half. My half? You're my husband. This is what family does. When I asked where Dario's half was coming from, she said he was emotionally preparing for fatherhood and couldn't handle financial stress. Then she told me he'd be moving into the guest room to bond with the baby. I said absolutely not. She called my mom on speaker, who sighed and told me to be realistic. The baby needed a stable home, and I had the space and the income. I hung up. Renata said flatly, I already gave him a key. I came home early a few days later to find Dario's car in my driveway, and his gaming rig set up in my guest room. What's for dinner? He asked. That night I checked our savings. $12,000 gone. Renata had taken 4 for Dario's therapy to process fatherhood. Within a week, the fridge was empty daily. I'd buy groceries and come home to Dario surrounded by containers, bulking for the baby. A credit card statement showed $6,000 in furniture I hadn't approved. Renata announced she was quitting her job. She started moving a crib into our bedroom and informed me I'd be taking the couch temporarily. Then she spent $5,000 more on a designer stroller, and when I confronted her, she started crying that I was financially abusing her during the most vulnerable time of her life. Dario's door opened and he got in my face about stressing his baby. That was the moment it crystallized. Standing in my own house, being lectured about money by a grown man eating my food and living in my guest room, with a wife who'd rewritten our marriage without my consent and parents cheering it on. So I stopped arguing and started documenting. I called a lawyer that night, not to make a scene, to be thorough. I'd saved every bank statement, every card charge, every text where Renata laid out her plans in writing, $23,000 in 8 weeks, all on paper. The next morning, I filed for divorce and filed to have Dario removed from a property that was, legally, mine alone from before the marriage. I opened a new account, redirected my paycheck, froze the joint accounts, and canceled the shared cards. I didn't do any of it out of spite. I did it because I'd finally understood that no one at that table was ever going to draw a line for me. I had to do it myself. 2 days later, Renata's card declined at the store. She called screaming. I told her to check her email. Dario got his notice the same week. My parents came over yelling about family and loyalty, and I laid the bank statements on the table without a word. The full accounting of what family had cost me in 2 months. They didn't have much to say after that. The court had everything documented. Renata's attempt to frame the finances as abuse fell apart against a paper trail that showed exactly who had spent what. Because the house was mine before the marriage and the debts were hers, she walked away with far less than she'd counted on. I sold the house a few months later and moved to a new state for a fresh start. Renata and Dario ended up crammed into my parents' place. Whatever they built from there was theirs to sort out. My parents called on my birthday. I looked at the phone for a while, and then I let it go to voicemail. Not out of anger anymore, just clarity. I'd spent years being the family bank, the reliable one, the one who'd absorb anything to keep the peace. The best thing I ever did was finally decide that keeping the peace wasn't worth losing myself. I've never slept better than I do now, in a quiet house that's entirely my own.